Stop! Before you click away, I need to warn you. What you're about to hear is not a game, it's not fiction. This actually happened in real life. I have for you a compilation of 10 very scary, true stories from the r/scarystories community on Reddit. You won't believe what happens in the last story, so watch the video till the end. Until now, if you get scared easily, leave. This is your only warning. But if you're brave enough to stay, it will be one of the scariest stories you will ever hear in your life. Before we start, subscribe to Mikey HR and hit the like button. If you haven't watched these 2 videos, you've missed out on a lot. You can watch it on the channel after this video. I spend hours finding these stories so you don't have to. It takes 2 seconds, and it means everything. Now, turn off the lights. And let's begin. Story 1. My husband's obsession with serial killers is ruining my life. My husband thinks he's a fucking reincarnated Sherlock Holmes. I can't even have a normal conversation with him. Everything has to be whodunits and murder mysteries. He sits there with a notepad and goes through every single documentary he can find and maps out every lick of evidence, every motive, and his personal suspects. Recently, he'd become distant. He still watches them, but never with me, always with the doors closed. He told me he had a headache, I tell Jazz, who sits on the countertop, legs swinging playfully. I chop onions for his dinner, unable to keep the venom bleeding into my tone. Like, I know he's not telling me something. Last night, he abandoned sex because he had a light bulb moment about some cold case he won't shut up about. I slice the onion into halves, peeling and dicing. But he insists on lying. I hiss, grabbing a towel and swiping at my eyes when they start to sting. Bro, I told you. Jazz sighs, leaning back, arms folded. Stop slicing onions without your glasses. He gestures to them sitting on the table, and I grab and slide them on. Anyway, your husband is a psychopath, very clearly. Jazz shrugs, leaning forward, chin on fist. He's wearing a different shirt today, a plain white, short-sleeved tee. I don't acknowledge it. Usually when he visits, it's his usual sweater and jeans. There were 0 signs, he mocks with a smirk. Also, your beau is literally binge-watching. My husband is a chainsaw-wielding psychopath who chopped me into 1,000,000 pieces. I jerk my head up, catching his smirk. I slice another onion with emphasis, cutting straight down the middle. You're not funny, I mutter, but my stomach twists, catapulting into my throat. I hate that suspicion even exists inside me, a slow-building dread I can't swallow. Every time I try, I find myself kneeling in front of the toilet, my head resting against cool porcelain. The stench of raw onion is too much, filling my mouth and nose. I gag, resting against the countertop, the knife slipping from my fingers. I haven't told him yet. I don't want to. I lunge toward the sink, choking up undigested lunch, my throat burning. You're pregnant, Jazz hums. Damn. I ignore him, downing a glass of water, bile clinging to my tongue. I found out yesterday. Huh. Jazz kicks his legs, tipping his head back. Okay, so just tell me if I'm overstepping. You're overstepping. I hiss back, swiping my mouth. I can't stop overthinking every coincidence I never thought more of. His weird obsession with Target, specifically the stationery section. Our neighbors mentioned him taking the car out late at night. I just awkwardly laughed and said, well, that's weird. You don't want to bring a child up in a murder house? Jazz teases in a sing-song. I glare at Jazz. You're the worst roommate ever. I rethink my insult, observing him sitting on my marble countertop. Kitchen goblin. Jazz feigns horror. I pay rent. We both know you don't. He winks and then repositions himself. Ditto. Anyway, so if I'm getting this right, you want to be a mom, but you don't want your kid to have a murderer for a parent. Madeline? Cayenne's voice rattles me. I'm home. Oh, shit, Jazz smirks. Murder husbando is back for round 2. Hi, honey, I greet Cayenne, ignoring Jazz dramatically grabbing his throat, pretending to choke. Babe. Cayenne wraps his arms around me, startling me into immediate submission. The knife slides from my clammy fingers. I've been thinking about you all day. He hums against my neck, pressing kisses against my throat. He makes me hot, flustered. Pregnancy hormones must be kicking my ass because I let him slam me against the countertop, riding his hips, kissing him so I don't think about how fucking suspicious he is. Right in front of my salad? Jazz deadpans. I can sense him glaring into the back of my skull. Please get a room before I shoot myself. Cayenne takes my hand and drags me upstairs. We have sex, but it's emotionless. He's thinking about something. He won't even look at me. I know what he's going to say as soon as he says it. That's it, he hisses in my ear halfway through a climax. I've solved it. He jumps off the bed wide-eyed, grinning maniacally. Do you remember that cold case I was talking about? He pulls me down to the garage, and something unravels inside me. The shutters roll up, and a murder board is nailed against the wall, filled with newspaper clippings. 10 years ago, 3 15-year-olds were murdered. There were 0 suspects, not even a lick of evidence. Cayenne stabs at the board, exhilarated. Rihanna Odessa. Cayenne prods the victims' names and photos. Ryan Baxter. Another stab. And Jazz Carter. My husband doesn't speak until he's nose to nose with me. The sheriff's daughter, he says softly. Madeline Forrest, who murdered her friends for discovering her father's corruption. The sheriff dumped the evidence and faked your alibi. I try to keep my composure, but I can't. Hysterical giggles erupt from my mouth. Corruption? I splutter. Baby, I didn't kill them to shut him up. I killed them because I was bored. I grab him gently and kiss him gently. To my surprise, he kisses back, eyes wide, frenzied. Now, I smile, sliding my knife out of my jeans and sticking it under his chin, taking his hand and placing it firming on my belly. Do you want to end up in a fucking murder documentary or have a baby with me? I pull him close, reveling in his shuddery, panicked breaths against my lips. Well? Jazz sits on an old washing machine behind us. The only one who refused to leave me the fuck alone. He rolls his eyes when my husband drops to his knees and begs for his life. Crazy bitch. Story 2. The police found evidence someone was living in my trunk. I still check my rearview mirror every 5 minutes, even when I'm parked in my own driveway. It's been months, but the smell of damp earth and rotting meat still haunts me. I'm writing this down because if I don't, the weight of the secret will eat me alive. Someone was living in my trunk, and to this day, I don't know how they got in. That night in November, up in northern Wisconsin, the snow was coming down so hard. I could barely see the edges of the road in front of my old Ford. I was heading home to Duluth after a long business trip, and I was so exhausted, I was struggling just to keep my eyes open. The heater was blasting, but the cold, it kept creeping in through those worn-out car doors. After driving for over 2 hours, I heard a faint tapping sound coming from the back seat. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Quickly, I didn't see anything strange, but the child seat, the one I'd kept since my niece's visit in the summer, looked like it had shifted a few inches. I convinced myself that the car had just hit a patch of ice. Minutes later, a strange smell filled the car. It was a mix of damp earth and rotting meat. A wave of unease washed over me, so I pulled over to the side of when I stepped out. The cold wind hit me like a wall. I shone my phone's flashlight around the car. Nothing. But then, I noticed fresh footprints in the snow near the trunk. The wind was already blurring them, but it looked like someone had been standing. I rushed back into the car and locked the doors. When I turned the key, the dashboard lights dimmed, then flickered back on. The battery was old, so I didn't think much of it, but what really chilled me was a soft metallic click from the back, like someone had just moved something inside the trunk. I tried to ignore it and kept driving. But not the feeling that I wasn't alone was growing. I kept checking the rear view mirror. At one point, I could have sworn something moved in the back seat, but when I turned around, nothing, just the dancing shadows cast by the headlights of distant cars and the falling snow. About 10 minutes later, I heard a faint rustling. It sounded just like someone shifting their weight. A shiver raced down my spine. I turned off the radio and silence filled the car. That's when I heard it again. This time, it was clearer. It was coming from the trunk. I pulled over immediately. I opened the door, stepped out with my phone light, and walked to the trunk. I was terrified to open it, but curiosity and fear pushed me. I lifted the latch. I didn't find a person or an animal, just an old metal toolbox that had slid around, banging against the sides with every turn. I let out a breath of relief for a moment, but that relief didn't last. Right on top of the toolbox, I found an old blanket. I didn't remember putting it there. It was damp, like someone had been using it. I stared at it for a few seconds before slamming the trunk shut and jumping back into the car. My fatigue was really messing with my head now, so I decided to stop at the first gas station I could find. About 20 minutes later, I pulled into an old station off Highway 2. The lights were on, but the parking lot was completely empty. I walked inside, shivering from the cold and the nerves. The place was uncomfortably quiet. I called out for the attendant, but no one answered. I wandered past the shelves until I reached the back office. There, I found a coffee cup, still warm. A landline phone was off the hook, and a chair was overturned on the floor. My stomach sank. It was clear. Someone had left in a hurry. Very recently, I pulled out my phone to call the police, but the signal was dead. As I was trying to find a bar, I heard the front door of the station open slowly. I spun around. I didn't see anyone, but fresh, wet snow tracks were leading from the entrance into the store. My breathing got fast, shallow. Logic was gone. I started backing up until I hit the glass drink cooler. That's when I saw it, in the reflection of the glass. There wasn't anyone standing behind me, but there was a man, a real man, standing between the aisles at the back of the store, watching me in silence. I hadn't heard him enter. I hadn't seen him. When I turned toward the door, he was just standing there. His clothes were soaked with snow. His face was pale, and his eyes were locked onto mine without a blink. I screamed at him asked him who he was, but he didn't answer. Then he started to walk toward me. Slowly, I bolted for the door. I ran out into the blizzard, and I didn't stop running until I reached the main road, where a municipal snowplow spotted me and pulled over. The next morning, the police went back to the station with me. They found footprints, both inside and outside the building, but they never found anyone. One of the officers told me that the station had been broken into several times over the past few weeks by an unknown man who had been hiding in abandoned buildings during the storms. They didn't know if it was the same man I saw, but for me, I can't get one thing out of my head. When the police opened my trunk to check it again, they found that old blanket, and it had fresh food scraps inside and a water bottle, half empty. Someone had been inside my car at some point that night, and to this day, I don't know when they got in or when they got out. Story 3, I caught my girlfriend cheating. She insists she did nothing wrong. For some backstory, me and my girlfriend have been arguing a lot recently. I know it's just a normal part of loving someone. Every relationship has its ups and downs. The only problem is it felt like all of our arguments have been revolving around me being too much, emotionally. I feel things deeply. Every silence, every awkward moment, it all becomes a reflection of myself. How she sees me is how I see myself. Well, rather, how I think she sees me. And unfortunately, lately, I've felt like she sees me as nothing more than an annoyance. I really tried to prevail. I began stifling myself, pretending I didn't feel this agonizing pain that told me I was losing her, and all it ended up doing was leading to more resentment on both ends. I wanted reassurance. She wanted peace. And those factors collided more than they should have. The point is, we've been butting heads. I've noticed something, though. It seems like she's less interested in resolution than she used to be. Before, no matter how severe the argument, she'd at least apologize. We'd hug and make up, then we'd fall asleep in each other's arms. Nowadays, it's like she can't even be bothered. She'll just let me lose my mind without so much as a single word. All she does is remove herself from the situation, hide away in the bathroom on her phone. She'd stay in there for up to an hour at a time, and she was in there at least 3 times a day. I'd always hear her behind the door, giggling to herself. But when she came out, it was back to being stone-faced. She started being super possessive of her phone. She'd sleep with it in her pocket. She never left it out. And I'd always catch her swiping away notifications anytime she saw me looking. Obviously, that was enough to make me suspicious. I have a firm belief that phones are interchangeable in healthy relationships. She can have mine whenever she wants it. I should be able to have hers. That being said, I didn't think I was being unreasonable when I managed to sneak it out of her pocket late one night as she lay sleeping. I really expected to find something in her messages, some hotshot she'd never mentioned before, but the messages were clean. Her photo gallery was clean, social media too. The only weird thing that I managed to find was an app that I'd never even heard of before. Your Perfect Man. At first I thought it was a dating app. The icon was just the silhouette of a man, outlined by a heart. Bingo, I thought to myself. However, when I opened the app, what I found was somehow worse than a dating app. The app loaded for a moment with a baby Cupid flying across the screen, shooting heart-shaped arrows to form the loading bar. After a few seconds, a chat box appeared consisting of hundreds of messages, each one going beyond what could be considered platonic conversation. Whoever she was talking to showered her in compliments, made jokes that I'm sure had my girlfriend blushing. Hell, they were even exchanging selfies. That's the thing, though. This wasn't just some random guy. Every picture he sent was just a photo of me. Photos that I'd never taken before. In some, he was shirtless, and without a doubt, he had a better body than me. This version of me had a six-pack and full pecs. In others, he was pantsless, and again, what I saw made me feel completely inadequate. He had perfect skin, a perfect smile, perfect hair, and he had my girlfriend eating out of the palm of his hand. It was like they connected better than we did. He said things to her that I used to say at the beginning of our relationship. I hate to say it, but he made her feel adored. I just couldn't wrap my head around what was happening. It was me, but better, I guess. Of course, I shook my girlfriend awake, demanding she explain herself. She was irritated at first, staring at me through half-awake eyes, but once she registered what I'd found, her irritation turned into fear. "Why were you going through my phone?" she asked accusingly. "That's what you're worried about? Not the fact that you've been apparently cheating on me with a guy who looks just like me, only better? I never would have expected this from you." She blinked a few times, staring at me blankly. Finally, she responded, "You seriously think I'm cheating on you? I would never do that to you. That is literally AI." I couldn't help but laugh at the sheer audacity of that statement. It's such a Hail Mary in today's age. Is that seriously your excuse? A fucking AI? Yes. Do you think I'm joking? I literally trained it on my ideal version of you. Let's be honest. You haven't been very rock solid recently. Excuse me for wanting my man back. "So you made an AI boyfriend?" I asked, agitated. She responded aggressively, "No, oh my God, I don't get what you're not getting. I made an AI you that you were sending nudes to." Can you give me a fucking break? It's literally you. It has your face. I mean, it literally has your personality. Besides... She paused for a moment. She looked guilty. "Besides what?" I demanded. "It's not a fucking crybaby. It doesn't get hurt over stupid shit. That's the only difference." The argument carried on into the early morning hours, and by the end of it, we were both too exhausted to keep fighting. Well, she was too exhausted. She was too adamant that she'd done nothing wrong to feel anything other than annoyance. Yet again, leaving me awake, staring up at the ceiling while I thought about her little fantasy. Against my better judgment, I decided to look at the app again. I figured maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was acting crazy. But before I could even open the app, a notification dropped down on my girlfriend's phone. It was my name. It was my picture. But what it said was not at all like me. I know he was looking at our messages. Don't worry, my love. He'll be taken care of shortly. Story 4. My wife keeps asking me to kill her. I'm not exactly sure how we ended up here. We were never the kind of couple that argued. We'd have our disagreements, sure, but I don't think that's what caused her to start doing this. Honestly, I don't know what to blame for this. We're both healthy. We planned on having children. We've built a little life together. It started as offhanded remarks. We'd be cuddled up in bed watching a movie together when out of nowhere she'd just say something that would make my heart sink. I can't wait for you to do that to me. During scenes from slasher films where the killer is violently stabbing the damsel in distress. I wonder what it feels like to die. During emotional hospital scenes from dramas, just weird things like that. Things that made me just secretly side-eye her and pretend like it didn't make me question her sanity. After a while, though, she didn't need a scene from a movie to spark her macabre desires. It was like she couldn't stop thinking about death. We'd be driving. It'd be a beautiful day. The sun would be shining. The birds would be singing. Then, out of nowhere, imagine if you just killed me right now. I'd laugh nervously and try to play it off as a joke. Yeah, I know, right? Like, imagine I just swerved the car off the road right now and we both died. She'd stare at me blankly, not even smiling. Or you could just stab me. Or you could strangle me to death. I think that'd be hot, right? We should try it sometime. It was comments like that that made me think this was just some sort of weird turn-on for her. Which, I mean, I guess, right? Who am I to kink shame? But it started getting deeper than that. She'd force my hands around her neck during sex. She'd scream at me to squeeze harder until I could see her going blue in the face. It was usually during that stage that I'd loosen my grip. She'd ridicule me for it. Call me a pussy. Call me a bitch. All because I didn't want to accidentally kill the love of my life. Even still, she'd push my limits little by little. She'd ask me to punch her in the stomach, black her eye. Essentially, she wanted me to beat the shit out of her, and that wasn't even during sex. It was like smoking to her. When she got the urge, she'd beg me until I gave in. I never wanted to go too far. I never blacked her eye, and when I punched her in the stomach, it was more like a love tap, just to satisfy her. But she could never be satisfied. I could tell that she was starting to feel resentment towards me for not being able to satisfy her. That's when knives came into play. Just poke me a little, she'd say, guiding the tip of the blade an inch or so above her belly button. I'll tell you when to stop. The knife would go deeper and deeper. Blood started to pool around the blade. She never even flinched. She'd just moan with pleasure while I tried not to throw up. I could never fully commit. It seemed like she genuinely wanted me to plunge the knife all the way through to her vital organs. But as always, every time I objected, she'd grow further away from me. She'd start coming home at late hours of the night. Her face would be swollen, her lips busted, and on one occasion, she came home with a broken arm. I knew she was seeing other men. Depraved, deplorable men who would be willing to do this kind of thing to her, but she always assured me, I want you to be the one who does it. It's been a hard year. I keep seeing her come home every night bloodier than the last. I don't know how much more I can take seeing her like this. I think I may have to give her exactly what she wants. Story 5, my girlfriend keeps forgetting. She broke up with me. Dude, honestly, I don't even know why I'm writing this. Things are just so stupid right now. Well, mostly stupid. I don't know whether to be annoyed or just flat out terrified. Me and my girlfriend have been together for 3 years now. I don't want to go through the whole spiel of how we used to be so happy or how I don't know how it ended up this bad, but I will say we were deeply in love. I'd have done anything for her, and I know she'd have done the same for me. I guess people just drift apart, though. I never expected it had happened to us, but what are you going to do? We'd been bickering for a few months before things finally snapped. Bickering turned to arguing. Arguing turned to full-blown fighting. Everything culminated in a massive screaming match. She threw some low jabs about my height. I threw some low jabs about her weight. I know how disrespectful it is, but we were both just so lost in the moment, I guess. Needless to say, that's when we knew that we were too far gone. We were never the type of couple that insulted one another, even in anger. For it to be happening now was like confirmation that we were past our expiration date. Even still, hearing the words come out of her mouth shattered my heart into a million pieces. Walking away was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I'm not too masculine to admit that I cried for hours. I had to force myself not to text, force myself not to call. I just let myself feel the weight of the newfound silence. It felt like the beginning of an incredibly dark period in my life. I wasn't sure I was ready to brace it. I didn't know if I was ready to be alone. I spent about 2 months wallowing before deciding that it was time to cowboy up. I'd gained 15 pounds in those 2 months. I had turned ghostly white, and for a while, I thought that I didn't even know how to socialize anymore. One day I just woke up. I was ready to start life again. It took a few months, but things started getting better. I was eating cleaner, going to the gym 4 times a week, and had started going out with friends again. I'd met a few women along the way, but I wasn't ready to get back into a relationship just yet. Unfortunately, my ex-girlfriend ensured I had no other choice. She just started showing up at my house at odd hours of the night. Sometimes she wouldn't even knock. She'd just stand there, right outside the door for hours on end. When she did knock, though, it was like she thought we were still together. I'd answer the door and get hit with the same remarks. "Why haven't you texted?" "I miss you, baby. Let's have a sleepover." "It's like you don't even love me anymore." Obviously, this confused the hell out of me. I'd explained that we were broken up. And now that I had some time to process, I realized that we weren't meant to be together anyway. She'd always get so angry, never enough for me to worry about my own safety, but enough that I could tell she was boiling on the inside. I'd send her away, and she'd stomp off like a pouting toddler. I wasn't even upset that she was showing up. I was more upset that she had broken up with me and she didn't even acknowledge it. She just expected me to let her waltz right back into my life all willy-nilly. It felt disrespectful. A few nights ago, she took it a step too far, though. I came downstairs to make some breakfast and found her passed out on my couch. No signs of forced entry, no broken door, broken windows, nothing. She was just there. Then she had the audacity to stretch and yawn with a smile like this wasn't the most outrageous shit she had ever done. When I told her she had to leave, she threw the biggest fit I had ever seen. Her face looked like boiling lava. She turned into a hurricane right there in the living room, cursing, spitting, knocking furniture over. I told her if she didn't leave, I was calling the police. And off she went, stomping through the door before slamming it closed behind her. I assumed that I had just left the door unlocked. And after that night, I triple-checked every single night that it was bolted shut. She didn't come back for a while. A day went by, then 2, then 3. I thought I was home free. I went through my whole routine of checking the locks on the doors and windows all throughout the house. You can never be too cautious. I even locked my own bedroom door just because the whole experience had made me paranoid, and I guess that's finally paid off. Because as I lay here in bed typing this, I can hear her coming up the stairs. She keeps singing my name like it's some kind of nursery rhyme. "Donovan, oh Donovan, where are you?" It was soft at first, but with each step it's gotten more and more demonic, more angry and unhinged. The footsteps have stopped right in front of my bedroom door, and the sound of the door handle bouncing up and down is paralyzing me. "Open the door, sweetie. I miss you, my sweet boy. Please let me come in. I can smell you, you dirty, dirty boy." The door handle looks like it's going to give at any minute. The door keeps warping and flexing. Her voice is getting angrier and angrier. I hope that people see this. That way, if I die tonight, you all know who to blame. Story 6, my friend found a mysterious box, and now I need your help. My friend Kyle and I were riding home from baseball practice when he suddenly suggested we take a different route through one of the rundown neighborhoods. He stopped in front of an abandoned house and dared me to go inside with him. In the backyard, we found a broken window and climbed in. Inside the dusty house, Kyle noticed a spot where the wall was broken. He pulled out a few loose bricks and found a mysterious metal box. He opened it, and for a moment I could see a glowing light and a complex mechanism of turning gears. It was immediately fascinating in an eerie, haunting way. I was intrigued and wanted to see more, but he just slammed the box shut and hurried back to our bikes. I followed him, begging him to let me see it again, but he got instantly mad and shoved me so hard I fell over my bike. Then he just rode off with the box under his arm and left me. The next day at school, I saw Kyle step out of a brand new car. It was weird because I could swear, up to this day, Kyle had always been a poor kid just like me. In the hallway, I saw him holding hands with Becky, the cutest girl in school. I asked him about it on our way to class, but he just said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been with Becky since forever, and I've been driving this car for a while now. Dude, get some rest." In class, the teacher handed back our history tests and specifically pointed out that Kyle had the highest score in the entire class. At baseball practice, he was insane, hitting perfect home runs with every swing. After school, I rode my bike to his house to confront him about the box. His house was a huge mansion. His mom and dad opened the door, smiling and friendly. I could have sworn Kyle came from a broken home with deadbeat parents, just like me. I asked him, "Yo, what's going on with the fancy house? Everything changed after you took that weird box. Where is it?" But he just dismissed me like I was crazy and slammed the door shut in my face. That night I felt confused and had nightmares of the box and the otherworldly ticking mechanism inside of it. But the next day, I woke up and it started to feel like it was all a dream, and I was the one with false memories. So I let it go and tried to forget about the box and my conflicting memories. Over the next week, things turned ugly. The other kids in school began hating on Kyle for being perfect at everything. Someone scratched and demolished his new car. His girlfriend, Becky, started following him around everywhere, totally obsessed with him. At home, I saw on the local news a story about his parents being suspected of criminal activity. Then on Friday night, Kyle texted me. I went outside and found him looking terrified, tears running down his face. "I made a huge mistake. You have to help me, please. Take the box, but don't use it on yourself, ever. Don't do what I did. And go to the locker room at the baseball field and open the door. I have to go now. Thanks for being my friend. I'm sorry." Then he jumped on his bike and disappeared into the night. I went to the baseball field, and when I reached the locker room, I heard desperate pounding from inside. The second I opened the door, Becky stumbled out. Her eyes looked sad and empty. "Where's Kyle? Have you seen Kyle? Kyle, where are you?" She kept repeating his name and ran off into the night. I'm back home now. The metal box is sitting on my desk. I'm scared out of my mind. Should I open it to try and help my friend? Or should I return it to the empty house and stay safe? I don't know what to do. Reddit, please help. Story 7, I gave a stranger a ride. He didn't just take a ride, he took my life. I used to think the worst part of my life was over. When I left Chicago, running away from a divorce, debts, and painful memories, I bought an old wooden cabin on the edge of the Ohio woods at a fair price. And I told myself, this is where I start fresh. Just an ordinary American guy, looking for a quiet life, a steady factory job, morning coffee, and deep, dreamless sleep. But unfortunately, this dream turned into a nightmare far worse than my previous life. The person I thought was my friend is the reason my life became a living hell. I was driving my old car on a winding highway in Ohio on a cold autumn afternoon in October. The trees were shedding their red leaves, looking like frozen blood. I had left my job in Chicago, seeking a quieter life in a small town called Riverside. A new job opportunity at a local factory promised me a clean slate after my bitter divorce. The road was almost empty, and the sun was slowly setting behind the hills. It gave me that classic American feeling of freedom I had always dreamed of. A lonely man building his future in the heartland. I stopped at an old gas station on the side of the road to fill up and grab a hot coffee. That's where I met John, a man in his 40s, wearing a worn-out leather jacket and a baseball cap. He said he was stuck after his truck broke down. He seemed completely normal, talking in a local accent about American football and the economy. So I invited him to ride along town. Over the next hour, we shared stories about life, laughed at silly jokes, and I felt I'd found a potential friend in a strange place. We reached my new home, an old wooden cabin on the edge of the forest that I'd bought cheap online. John helped me carry a few boxes, then left on foot after I gave him my phone number. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months, but I woke up at dawn to a faint sound, like footsteps on the roof. I thought it was a squirrel or the wind, so I rolled over and went back to sleep. The next morning, I noticed the kitchen door was slightly open, even though I'd locked it tight. And there was a small spot of mud on the floor. I didn't think much of it. The town is quiet and people are friendly. I spent the day organizing the house and calling work. In the evening, I went to the local pub where I heard stories about drifters wandering the surrounding woods. But everyone assured me they were just rumors. When I got back, I found a coffee mug I'd used that morning, washed and turned upside down on the table. I felt a slight chill, but I blamed it on my own forgetfulness. John called me the next day to ask if I was okay, so I invited him over for dinner as a gesture of gratitude. We talked for a long time about our dreams and how America is full of opportunities for those who work hard. But when he left, I noticed he knew exactly where the spare key was under the planner without me ever telling him. In the days that followed things started accelerating slowly. Sounds of light furniture moving upstairs while I was gone. Food disappearing from the fridge. And the smell of cheap cigar smoke drifting from the bedroom. I called the police once, but they said it was just wild animals or my imagination. I was working nights at the factory, coming back exhausted, trying to convince myself that everything was normal. By the second week, the anxiety turned into real escalating fear. I'd get home from my shift around 2 a.m, and I'd find muddy footprints inside the house, bigger than my own, clearly visible on the carpet. I started installing a cheap security camera I bought from Walmart, but it only recorded mysterious shadows moving in the corners. John visited me again, acting sympathetic, suggesting I change the locks, and telling me about a friend of his who had a similar break-in. He helped me check the house and pointed out a hatch in the attic that had been closed before. We climbed up together and found an old blanket and cigarette butts, but he said it was probably from the previous owner. That night, I heard heavy breathing close to my bed, so I turned on the light immediately. But the room was empty. The next day, I discovered my phone had deleted text messages from an unknown number. "You're living my life now." I called the town police again, and an officer named Mike came over. He checked the place and found unidentified fingerprints, but he advised me to move to a hotel temporarily. I refused. I'm not a coward, and this is my new home in the America I built with my own sweat. I started sleeping with my gun by my side, a gun I bought legally a week after I arrived. John started visiting me daily, bringing food and staying for hours, talking about his past in the military and how he lost his family in an accident. I felt comfortable with him, but he knew small things about me I had never mentioned, like the color of my underwear or my habit of drinking coffee black. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. I grabbed my gun and went up quietly. I found the attic door open, and inside, someone sleeping on the floor. But they vanished before I could get close. In the morning, there was a message written in blood on the mirror. "This has been my home for years." The police took samples and confirmed that an intruder had been living in the walls or the attic for some time. I started feeling like I was going insane, watching every corner, avoiding sleep. John tried to calm me down, but he seemed tense too. The events were logical. A drifter who knew the house well, sneaking in while I was gone, using spare keys. There was nothing supernatural, just other humans stealing your life, slowly. By the third month, the horror reached its peak in a way I never expected. I had changed all the locks, installed extra cameras, and reported to the police daily. But one cold night, I returned from work early because of a malfunction at the factory, and I heard a muffled sound from the bedroom. I entered quietly, gun in hand, and found John himself sitting on my bed, wearing my clothes, scrolling through my phone. He looked at me with completely calm eyes and said in a normal voice, "You're finally back. I've been waiting for you." It turned out he had been living in the attic for months before I even arrived, having escaped from a nearby prison after being convicted of burglary and murdering his ex-wife in a neighboring town. He had been sneaking through a hidden hatch in the ceiling, watching me, eating my food, and building a friendship to slowly take control of my life. I tried to fire, but he was faster. He hit me hard on the head with an iron bolt he had been hiding. I woke up tied up in the attic, hearing his voice talking downstairs with the police over the phone, claiming I was the attacker. Blood was streaming from my wound, and the pain was burning my body. As I realized my life had ended right here in this house that was supposed to be a new beginning. I never saw his face again, but I heard his car driving away and the sound of police sirens slowly approaching. Now, after weeks in the hospital, I live in constant fear. I wonder if he's back, or if there are others like him waiting in the shadows. The town is quiet as usual, and people are talking about the unfortunate incident. But I know the real horror isn't in monsters. It's in the neighbors who smile at you while they steal your soul. The end hasn't come yet, and maybe it never will. Story 8, I think something is replacing people in my village. I don't really know how to explain this properly. But something weird is going on in my village, and I can't stop thinking about it. I live in a small coastal village in Scotland. It's the kind of place where nothing really happens. Everyone knows everyone, same routines, every day, same people walking the same routes. If something changes, people notice straight away. About 2 weeks ago, my neighbor went missing. Just gone one day. His car was still outside. Lights in the house were still on. Nothing looked forced or broken. It was like he just left and never came back. Police came, asked questions, checked the area, but there was nothing. No signs of anything happening. At first, I didn't think much of it. People go missing sometimes, and it usually turns out to be something normal. But then, a few days later, I started noticing small things that felt off. I was up really late, maybe around 2 a.m., just on my phone near the window. I saw someone walking past outside. At first, I didn't really pay attention, but then I realized it looked like my neighbor. Same jacket he always wears. Same way he walks, because he has a slight limp. That's what made me look twice. I opened the window a bit and called out his name. He stopped immediately. That part still doesn't sit right with me, like he was waiting for it. He turned and looked at me, but it didn't feel normal. He wasn't really reacting like a person would. Just standing there, staring. After a few seconds, he said my name back, but it sounded wrong. Flat. Like he was repeating something he'd heard before rather than actually recognizing me. I asked where he'd been, and he didn't really answer. Just stood there for a bit too long, then turned around and walked away, like nothing had happened. Next morning I checked Facebook and his mom was still posting, asking if anyone had seen him. He was still officially missing. That's when I started trying to convince myself I was just tired or imagining things. But then it happened again with someone else. A woman from a few streets down went missing next. Same pattern. No trace, no explanation, just gone. A couple nights later, I was walking past the shop late at night and saw her outside. She wasn't going in or doing anything normal, just standing there facing the glass. Completely still. No phone, no movement. I slowed down because it felt weird, and when I got closer, she turned her head really slowly and looked straight at me. She smiled, but it didn't look right. Like she was copying what a smile is supposed to look like rather than actually doing it. She said something like, "You're not supposed to notice yet." And I just kind of walked away because I didn't know how to respond to that. Since then, I've started noticing small things more. People taking slightly too long to reply in conversations. Standing a bit too still when they think no one is looking. Saying things slightly off, like the tone is wrong even if the words are normal. Last night, someone knocked on my door at around 3 a.m. When I looked out the window, it was my neighbor again, or something that looked exactly like him. He didn't say anything, just stood there for a while, like he was waiting for something. Then he raised his hand and waved. It was slow and too deliberate, like he had practiced it and wasn't sure how it was supposed to feel. I didn't open the door. He eventually walked off down the street. But this morning I noticed footprints outside my window, facing inwards, even though the street is on the other side of the house. I don't really know what's going on anymore, but I'm starting to think the people who go missing here aren't actually gone. Story 9, there's something wrong with my neighbors. And it is traumatizing everyone involved. Harold is a nice guy, he really is. The same goes for his family. Him, his wife, and his son. Not their pets though, but we will get to that. They are an otherwise nuclear family. He hosts the neighborhood BBQ every once in a while during the summer, and his wife Bianca bakes holiday cookies for the entire neighborhood during December. Their son Job is a nice boy too. He politely asks if he can shovel my driveway, the first snowfall of every winter, and asks if he could take a flower or two from my garden to give to his mom in the summer. If it weren't for some of the actions they have taken and some of the things I've seen, I wouldn't be writing this post at all. I should probably preface that I have no history of mental illness, at least prior to living here, or visual hallucinations. I did have an audio hallucination once, but that's because I ate a brownie that I would later learn was a special brownie. And I began hearing monkeys screaming in the drywall. Anyway, back to the neighbors. I have no issues with how they interact with anyone, especially towards me. Well, I guess I should just flat out say it, since there really is no delicate or seamless way to transition into it. Harold has no skin, Bianca is only skin, and Job is a skeleton. I mean, you know, those 3D medical models that depict the muscle layer of a human with the fascia. That's Harold. What's worse, though, is that he's constantly bleeding. He addresses it by saying he has an unusually aggressive form of hyperhidrosis, but I think we all know. It's worse with his clothes. They become soaked and stained. Unless he's wearing black or red as you converse with him, you'll witness firsthand a white shirt become soaked in red within minutes. He always carries a handkerchief to wipe his face, but he keeps it in his pocket, so as you'd imagine, it's usually soaked. You can always hear Harold coming by the sound of a joyful laugh and squelching shoes. He also leaves a trail of blood in his wake, always, so you'll never lose him, even if you tried. Then there's Bianca, sweet Bianca. She moves like a sheet in the wind. You know those cheap Halloween masks you see at Spirit Halloween? That's her face. She has no eyes, her head is hollow. Not as an insult, I mean, you can literally look inside her head and it is empty. And her face stays the same, never moving. She does speak, though. I won't lie. Her makeup on her mask-esque face is immaculate, and she always has her hair done right for the occasion. She's so nice. But I won't lie. When she walks, it makes every alarm in my head go off. She moves like a mix between a specter and a baby deer, her arms hanging limp as she flings her legs forward. You can tell she's using whatever strength she has to hold her torso upright, but usually she lets her head flail to prevent her spine from collapsing. Her outfits are also great, but I've seen her safety pin a tank top to her shoulders so it wouldn't slide off while she was playing with Job. It sent shivers down my spine. She speaks in a lovely sing-songy voice that reminds me of early Disney princesses. Then there's Job. He's a skeleton. That of child, since he is one. Duh. He goes to elementary school, he plays with the other kids, and he's actually quite popular, considering his circumstances, we'll say. He's bald, like his dad, and moves almost exactly like his mom, but a tad bit more rigid and a heck of a lot faster. Then there's the pets. They have a dog named Sparky. He's literally just a guy in a cheap dog costume ordered off of Amazon. I will give him that. I've never seen him take off the dog costume, but Bianca or Harold will walk him, and he walked like any other human, but with a leash. I would now like to recite a conversation I overheard between Bianca and another neighbor while I was tending to my garden and Bianca was walking Sparky. "Good morning, Bianca," our other neighbor said. "Good morning, my goodness, such a beautiful day." Bianca responded happily, "Hello, Sparky." I heard my other neighbor say, in the voice most people use when talking to a dog, "Woof." Sparky said in a monotone man's voice. "Oh my," our other neighbor snapped. Based off the tone of voice I heard in some distance behind me, it leads me to believe that Sparky did either something rude or aggressive. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. He's a rescue. Job wanted a dog so bad. How could I say no to my boy's sweet face? I guess I better get moving, but always great to see you," Bianca explained as I assumed she hurried away. She produces no sound when she walks, so I just used context clues. Their cat, Zoe, is actually just a normal Sphinx cat. She's an asshole, though. Won't stop getting out and pooping in my yard. So now you know my neighbors, aside from their looks. What's so bad about them if they are nice, right? Wrong. I saw Harold and Bianca having sex in their backyard by accident one night. My bedroom is on the second floor with, unfortunately, a window facing the side of their house, which also includes a view into their fenced backyard. I remember hearing strange, groaning and moaning noises loudly in the middle of the night. I looked at my phone on the nightstand, and it was about 3:33 in the morning. What degenerate is doing the nasty? I mumbled sleepily to myself. I pulled myself out of bed, turned on the lamp, and looked out the windows. First, the window facing the street. Nothing. Then the window facing my neighbor's house. I saw some guy with long hair standing in the backyard. He was naked and slightly hunched over. I was confused, though. There was one guy, but I heard two distinct voices. One male, one female. Now I was tired, and at this point, confused more than I already was from my sleepy days. I assumed that maybe this was some drug addict attacking Bianca. He could have been crushing her into a ball for all I knew. Because her papery figure, just because she looked weird didn't mean she deserved to be attacked. So I did something stupid, but in good faith. I quickly walked over to the dresser, grabbed my flashlight I kept there for power outages, went back to that window, opened it, and shined a light at the man. "Hey, what are you doing in neighbor's backyard?" I shouted firmly and loudly, hoping to scare the believed drug addict from potentially hurting someone. When the man turned around, we met each other's eyes. I would recognize Harold's freakishly blue eyes from anywhere. He was wearing Bianca. Her skin was stretched so tautly over his body that it looked as though it was about to rip like fabric. It looked like Bianca's face was stretched over Harold's, like if it were a normal guy being stretched by the most severe wind tunnel. His hands were placed over her breasts, and her entire body was smeared with blood. The same blood that was leaking out from the eye holes and mouth hole as I stared at them now. It couldn't have been more than 15 seconds, but for me it felt like hours. I distinctly remember my immediate reaction. "Oh, Jesus!" I screamed in horror as I turned away, slamming the window shut as I turned my body. I could hear Harold and Bianca's muffled yet panicked voices in the distance. Worse enough, I could hear the squelching steps of them running back into their house. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I just stared at the ceiling as I lay in bed. That image burned into my retinas every time I closed my eyes. Then morning arrived. A couple of hours later, I heard my doorbell ring. I went downstairs and opened the door. It was Harold, Bianca, and Sparky who was on a lead. Harold was holding a plate of cookies that I know Bianca made. Harold says he tries not to cook due to hyperhidrosis and not wanting to get others sick. Bianca was shyly turned away, holding Sparky's lead. Sparky was also facing away because he was peeing on my lawn like how a drunk guy pees in a back alley. At one point, I could see him flipping me off during my conversation with Harold and Bianca, quietly smack Sparky's arm and say, "Sparky, naughty." Anyway, the conversation, I remember when I initially opened that door, my stomach dropped. I wanted nothing more than to slam the door, but when I saw the plate of cookies and Bianca's shy body language, I decided it was only fair to at least listen. "I'm really sorry about last night," Harold said as he handed me the plastic-wrapped cookies, the plastic drenched in blood. "No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Oh, no, believe me. If we saw you do something like that, we'd probably have the same reaction. Though I must ask you not to take the Lord's name in vain," he said with that extreme charisma he always had. I stared at the cookies. I feigned a smile at him. "Look, me and the missus don't get much time alone anymore, and well, Job is with his grandparents, and we wanted to try something. I'm sorry you had to see. It won't happen again. Are we cool?" he said with sincerity. My first thought was fuck no. However, these weren't inherently malicious people. So I nodded with a semi-real smile this time, and they went about their day. I did slam the door though, lean my back against it, and slide onto the ground. I looked at the cookies. Bianca made me her favorite cookies, which were the least favorite of the neighborhood, her black bean cookies. I have lots of more experiences. I wanted to start off with the one that scarred me the most, because if I have to have that in my mind, so do you too. I go to therapy now, and that helps. I'll talk to my therapist and see if I should write again. It actually helped me process some stuff, like she said. Story 10, they're hunting me for my 2026 World Cup tickets. I was driving a rented Ford on Interstate 10 through Texas. It was just past 3 a.m., and I was stuck in some bizarre, unexplained traffic jam. The World Cup had turned the roads into a war zone. Cars were piled up everywhere, and fans were crowding the abandoned rest stops. I pulled into a small, nondescript gas station. The place was packed, but the silence was eerie. I went into the store. The shelves were half empty, and the clerk, a guy in his 20s, was shaking. He whispered, "Don't stop at any rest areas before the next city. There are gangs out there posing as highway patrol, taking advantage of the chaos." I brushed it off as rumors, but when I walked out, I found a clean, long slash across my tire. Not a nail, but a deliberate cut. My heart started pounding. I looked in the side mirror and saw a black pickup truck with no plates, idling in a dark corner, its engine humming quietly. No one got out, but I felt eyes watching me from behind the tinted glass. I patched the tire with shaking hands and sped off. The truck didn't try to pass, it just stayed right behind me, keeping the exact same distance, just watching. All along the way, my phone kept buzzing with non-stop notifications from the World Cup ticketing app and weird security alerts about fan data being compromised in the area. It felt like my phone itself had become a beacon, signaling exactly what I had in my bag: those rare VIP tickets for the semifinals. After an hour of driving, my GPS map went haywire due to a network outage. The black truck was still there, its high beams burning into my rearview mirror. I pulled into an old roadside motel, my only real option to escape the tale. I entered the lobby. It smelled like mildew and rot. An old woman greeted me, staring at a TV screen that was blasting the sound of cheering crowds at an uncomfortably high volume. I paid cash and rushed to my room on the second floor. I double-bolted the door and stood there, catching my breath. Minutes later, the truck pulled up outside. I peeked through the curtains and saw 2 men getting out, wearing high-visibility work vests. But they were carrying hidden firearms. They started smashing windows of the cars in the lot, ransacking luggage, looking for something specific. Then they reached my room. I hit the floor, lights off. I heard their footsteps on the wooden stairs stopping right outside my door. No knocking, just the sound of a master key sliding into the lock. I froze, armed with nothing but a dying phone and a butter knife. The sound of their breathing on the other side of the door was the only thing I could hear over the distant blaring TV. Suddenly, my phone rang. A text from an unknown number. Do not open the door. Call 911 even if you have no service. The phone will broadcast your location automatically. I tried to dial, but the key turned and the deadbolt gave way. They slammed into the door, but the furniture I'd shoved against it kept it from opening fully. They screamed, "We know you have the tickets. Give them to us and you walk out of here alive." I realized then, these weren't just common thieves. This was an organized ring tracking the tickets by hacking into the public Wi-Fi networks I'd connected to at the previous stops. I scrambled out the back window, jumped onto the motel roof, and sprinted toward the woods. In the pitch black, I tumbled into a deep pit. I tried to climb out, but I saw the charred remains of a car at the bottom, filled with the personal belongings of others. I realized this motel wasn't just a business, it was a slaughterhouse for travelers. I heard their footsteps approaching the edge of the pit. I smelled the gasoline being poured from above. There was no way out. I grabbed my phone, desperately trying to upload this story to the cloud. The signal was barely a sliver, but I hit send just before the light flared above me. I don't know if anyone will ever find these notes, or if you're reading this right now. But if you are, just know the game never ended for them. The lighter dropped, and now all I see is fire. If you're still here, you just made it through one of the scariest stories you will ever hear in the internet. Most people clicked away. You didn't. That means something. I want to know, and do you think this actually happened, or is it just a story? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this video gave you chills or kept you up at night, hit the like button. It takes 1 second and it tells me you want more stories like this. Subscribe to Mikey Blocks and turn on the bell, because the next story I found is even darker than this one. You don't want to miss it. Until next time, stay safe out there.